A singular large thistle is found. The leaves are smooth and have a silver margin, with not the most aggressive of spines. The large, beautiful purple flower heads nod in the wind and attract lots of bees. 2 years later, there are hundreds of flowering thistles. How did this get out of control so fast? Today we are discussing the invasive biennial musk thistle. I'm Christy Gladome. I've worked in biological control for over 10 years. Welcome to the Colorado Department of Agriculture's Biological Control Series in collaboration with the USDA Western Sustainable Agricultural Research and Education Program. Carduus nutans, also known as musk thistle or nodding thistle, is a biennial thistle species first brought to North America in the 1800s from Europe. I usually find that thistles are the most misidentified weeds in the field, so please take time and careful consideration to properly identify your thistle. There are at least 20 native thistle species in Colorado and over 80 native thistles in North America, some of which are threatened, endangered, or limited to very small geographic regions. All of these native thistles are important parts of their ecosystems and our natural heritage. There are roughly 5 invasive non-native thistles in Colorado. Musk thistle may be differentiated from other thistle species in a few ways. The flowers are always purple. If you find white, yellow, or light pink flowers, it is not musk thistle. Clusters of flowers are also not found on musk thistle. Musk thistle flowers are always single flowers at the end of a stem. These musk thistle flowers are also typically larger than most other thistle flowers. They can be 2 to 3 inches across, or roughly the size of a golf ball to baseball. These flowers are heavy and bend the stems of the plants, giving the thistle the name nodding thistle. The flowers have large bracts. These are leaf-like structures that cover the bottom of the flower head. These bracts give each flower the appearance of an artichoke, or kind of like a pine cone. The leaves of musk thistle usually have a silvery margin, meaning the outside edges of each leaf will be slightly lighter in color. While some other thistles can be quite hairy or fuzzy, musk thistle leaves and stems do not have hairs and are smooth even though they do still have spines. Keep all these properties in mind as you assess your thistle infestation. If you are unable to definitively identify a thistle species, take photos and reach out to local native plant groups, extension agents, or other knowledgeable professionals. Musk thistle only grows from seeds. The seeds may germinate at any time of the growing season when enough soil moisture is available, but most typically this occurs in spring or fall. The plants form a rosette of leaves close to the soil surface, which will grow and must overwinter before being able to flower. Rosettes can reach up to 2 feet in diameter. After spending the winter as a rosette, plants will begin flowering by sending up a central stalk. This is called bolting. The bolting plant will reach 2 to 6 feet in height with an upright appearance. Sometimes 2 to 7 stems can be produced from a single rosette, but usually in high-density infestations, it's a single stalk. In early summer, musk thistle will form singular flowers near the tip of each branch, beginning at the top of the plant and then flowering lower and lower as the season progresses. Each flower may produce anywhere from 100 to 1,000 seeds with germination rates up to 81%. This means even a singular plant can start a new and large infestation. The seeds produced are pappus, meaning they have small hairs attached. This can help the seeds be dispersed by animals, wind, or water. But usually the seeds stay attached to the flower heads and are deposited very densely at the base of the infestation. This makes musk thistle patches fairly slow to spread. Flowering and seeding can continue throughout the entire rest of summer if soil moisture is adequate. Once the plants flower, they are susceptible to frost and will die off in winter. New plants will come up from the seed deposited. Rosettes will still overwinter. When an infestation is already in place, it's important to target either the rosette before it bolts or disrupt the seed production of the plant, since that is how they reproduce. If eradication of small discrete patches of musk thistle is desired, biological control will not be the right management strategy. However, if you have large, extensive patches, and the goal is to reduce the density of musk thistle on a longer time scale of say 5 to 6 years with minimal input, reduce invasion potential for neighboring properties, and reduce disturbance of the land as much as possible, then biological control is a great choice. Trichosirocalus horridus, or T. horridus, is a weevil first introduced for control of several invasive thistles in the 1970s. In the 1960s and 1970s, Many of our native thistles were considered pest species, and less importance was put on the ecological function of thistles. T. horridus was known to feed on multiple thistle species within the Cirsium genus, but this was considered a good thing. Today, this agent would probably not be approved in the same way, and much more rigorous testing would be required for field feeding preferences and non-target effects. There have been some studies to look at the incidence of T. horridus on native thistles in North America, but none have shown very high prevalence or significant damage to native thistles. Nonetheless, it is important to be judicious in release of these weevils and avoid areas where threatened and endangered thistle species occur. There are not threatened or endangered thistle species in Colorado, but there are a few in New Mexico, so pay more attention if you are in the southern part of the state. Be aware that these weevils are not legally allowed to be moved across state lines. As always, before considering collecting biological control agents, please ensure you have the proper permission or permitting to do so, and ensure the biological controls are permitted and allowed in your area. Movement of biological controls across state lines is regulated by the USDA-APHIS PPQ, and interstate movement is not allowed in the case of T. horridus. T. horridus weevils are about the size of an M&M. They are mottled brown and black with a very curved, thin snout. They can emit a high-pitched squeak when handled, though you would need to hold them close to your ear to hear it. When they are disturbed, they will tuck their snouts and legs in while playing dead to form a perfect little ball that looks like a soil cloud or pebble. Adults emerge in late winter to early spring and begin laying eggs on the underside of the musk thistle rosette leaves. Eggs are laid in groups of 2 to 3, and each female can lay anywhere from 800 up to 2,000 eggs during their lifetime. Eggs hatch and the larvae will begin feeding inside of the leaf tissue towards the center growing portion of the plant. The larvae will leave the plant and pupate, turning into adults in the soil around the rosette. New adults will emerge in 6 to 8 weeks. We normally see this group of new adults in June and sometimes early July in Colorado. They will be active for only a few short weeks, feeding heavily on the musk thistle, and then they disappear for the summer. The new adults can re-emerge as temperatures drop in the fall, usually around September. They may lay new eggs in fall. Eggs, larvae, pupate, and adults will all hibernate over the winter to begin the cycle again the following year. Collecting rosette weevils is fairly straightforward. I like to scout sites in early spring in April to May. I check the ground for musk thistle rosettes to make sure there will be enough plants to collect from. Usually a few hundred is a good site. I will mark good sites using GPS to come back to later in the season. You might see a few ovipositing adults at this point in the season. They will be on the underside of leaves and usually solitary. They are much harder to collect in spring, and there's usually fewer of them. If they are collected, they will need to be relocated right away. I also check the musk thistle rosettes for a change of color in the center of the growth. The main stems of the leaves may also have turned red. These color changes in the plant indicate larval feeding, which is what we want to see. I will plan on visiting good sites for collection in early June, or about 6 weeks after seeing the overwintering adults on the spring rosettes. It is better to be a bit early and be able to revisit a site rather than be too late. It's also possible to find new sites in June if you are unable to scout in the spring. When musk thistle is infested with T. horridus, it will typically have developed multiple flowering stems instead of just a single bolting stem because of damage from larval feeding at that central point of growth in the rosette. Leaves will also accumulate a lot of damage from the new adults. Weevils, when in high numbers, should be easy to see on the plants in the leaf axils. This is where leaves or stems split off from the main stem. The weevils collected at this time are not going to be laying eggs yet, but there should be large numbers, making it easier to collect and giving a bit more flexibility for release timing. Weather conditions or site elevation can shift the season of collection by a couple of weeks in any year. Any day chosen for collection should be rain-free on dry foliage. If insect nets get wet, it greatly increases the chance of damaging or killing the collected insects. Sunny days are good, but the hotter it is, the more the insects may want to disperse or hide from the heat, which could make it harder to collect. For collection, you will need an insect net with heavy canvas, no gauze or netting, gloves, long sleeves, an insect collection container with lid containing musk thistle foliage, a cooler to store the collected insects. Optionally, you may want to bring a sorting tray and forceps or aspirators for removing bycatch, depending on the release site. I strongly recommend thick leather gloves and long sleeves, as musk thistle spines can be quite irritating. For the insect collection container, you can use cardboard pint containers, a pillowcase with a drawstring, or a plastic container that has a screened hole in the lid for ventilation. To collect the insects, hold the insect net with the hoop 45 degrees to nearly flat below the bulk of the musk thistle. Using your other arm and hand, gather and tap the musk thistle plant across the opening of the net 5 to 10 times to get weevils to fall into the net. You can make your way across the musk thistle infestation and periodically shake down the net to concentrate the insects at the bottom of the net. It is possible to go over the same musk thistle a couple of times in the field with at least 10 minutes between taps. A good set of taps on a plant should yield at least 10 adult weevils, and sometimes up to 20 or 30. If you are getting less weevils per plant, then a couple of things could be happening. Either the weevils present have not built up a high enough population to be collectible, the timing of collection is too early or too late in the season, or if you can see lots of weevils on the plants, you just may not be tapping hard enough. When the net has a few hundred weevils, you can empty it into the insect collection container. To empty the insect net, shake or tap the net to concentrate the weevils at the bottom of the net. Grasp the net right above where the insects are concentrated to close off the opening. While still grasping the net, push your hand through the hoop of the net so the net is inverted but still held closed by your hand. Hold this directly above your open collection container and push your hand the rest of the way through while releasing your grasp so your hand is pushing the inverted net into the collection container. You can give your hand a little wiggle inside the inverted net in your collection container to get any straggling insects off. Make sure to put the lid on well and keep the container either in the shade or in a cooler with ice packs so you don't overheat and kill the collected weevils. Once insects are collected, either you've gone over the entire patch or you have approximately enough insects in your collection container for your releases, you will need to sort the weevils. There is another very problematic weevil commonly found on musk thistle called Trichosirocalus. They are oblong instead of round and also a bit larger than T. horridus. These weevils feed on almost every type of thistle and can pose a significant threat to native, threatened, and endangered thistles. Trichosirocalus should never be distributed. If you are finding a lot of Trichosirocalus, it may not be the best collection site. To sort musk thistle weevils, you will need an aspirator or a forceps, containers for the sorted insects, a cooler with ice packs or a refrigerator, and optionally a sorting tray. The containers should be roughly pint-sized and contain non-flowering musk thistle leaves and stems as food. A dry paper towel can also sometimes be placed in the container to help control humidity levels and provide cushioning if the insects are to be moved a long distance. To begin sorting, you will want to cool the collected weevils. They may already be chilled out enough from placing them in a cooler in the field. Cooling them helps to slow down their movement and prevent them from flying while you try to sort them. Make sure you do not freeze them, but any refrigerator around 40 degrees Fahrenheit will work fine. Place weevils into a sorting tray or sort directly from your container. We use photography chemical trays, but a baking sheet or other rim flat container will work just fine. To sort the insects, you may either use forceps or an aspirator. If you use forceps, you may place the weevils individually into a release container, and if using an aspirator, they will collect in the aspirator's collection container. Count as you go and aim for 100 insects per release cup. This will be enough insects to begin a new infestation. I normally recommend around 1 release per acre of musk thistle infestation, but a higher release rate will just establish insects a bit quicker and provide faster control. Releasing fewer insects may cause the weevils to not establish or to take quite a bit longer to build up their population. Releasing musk thistle weevils is incredibly straightforward. Prepared releases in cups can be stored for up to 1 week in a refrigerator, but releasing as close to the collection time is better for the health of the insect. Take your release cups into the patch of musk thistle you would like to introduce weevils. Usually mid-morning on a sunny day is the best time for release as the insects will be more active, but any time should be okay. Don't release in very heavy rain, but if it rains after release, it is okay, the insects will be fine. Open up the container and tip the weevils out into the musk thistle patch all in one spot. They will disperse themselves throughout the patch, so you should not need to scatter them. If they are clinging inside of the cup, you can take a bit of grass or soft foliage and gently brush them out of the cup. Weevils have a startle response, which can cause them to play dead. It can be very convincing, but they should begin moving about in a couple of minutes. I like to take a photo of the weed patch for future reference, a GPS point, the number and species of weevil release, and the date of release for my record. You should begin to see the results of your release within 2 to 3 years. It takes time for weevils to establish their populations. Adult weevils at high population levels can have serious defoliating effects on musk thistle. The center of rosettes will darken when the larva feeding is high enough. Both of these indicators could possibly be seen within your infestation a year after release. While While the weevils will attack the rosettes of most new musk thistle plants, hopefully reducing flowering and seeding, the weevils do not prevent new plants from coming up from the seed bank already present. The seeds contained within the soil below an infestation can lay dormant for 10 to 15 years, although exact numbers are not known. It can take time for the soil seed bank to be depleted, and during that time, new plants can germinate and grow. The weevils established will help to prevent any of those plants from producing new seed, but they will not fully eradicate musk thistle. 90 to 95% reductions in thistle stands have been reported 5 to 6 years after weevils have been established. Eradication of musk thistle from your land will take an integrated approach. Not all control methods will be compatible with the weevils. It is especially important to not destroy the developing larvae within the rosettes or the adults on the flowering plant. Tillage is generally not compatible, as disking or plowing will destroy overwintering larvae and adults in the soil. Similarly, mowing is not going to affect rosettes but might destroy adults as they are feeding on bolting plants in summer to late fall. Mowing can also spread seeds. However, clipping off the flower heads in late July and August could help prevent seeding, and the adults will not be present on the plants. Hand pulling or herbicide application of rosettes in the fall when weevils are not present on plants could also be compatible to reduce thistle populations. Herbicide should not be applied to flowering plants, as the plants can be fairly resistant to herbicide when flowering, and it does not prevent seed set. Herbicide applications may also be detrimental by causing large patches of bare ground that can be invaded by other weeds or even provide a better environment for new musk thistle seeds to sprout. Leaving only a couple of plants can begin new large infestations, so when the population gets low enough, herbicide hand pulling or using a small shovel or hoe to sever the taproot of rosettes should be used each year until musk thistle is eradicated. A healthy landscape with lots of competitive native vegetation may see better and faster results from biological control. Strategies could include tillage-free reseeding and providing supplementary moisture during the growth stages of desirable plants. I hope this video has given you the information, methods, and confidence to identify, collect, release, and manage musk thistle weevils. There will be a list of resources and sources in the video description if you would like to read more about these helpful insects and how you can manage musk thistle. Thank you for joining me today.